Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. The podcast helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, the CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support podcasts such as this one, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution. And that you can find that right in the show description. We're recording this episode on Thursday, October 3rd, and joining me as always, my friend and colleague, the well-traveled, the well-heeled, the very handsome Orphe Divounguy. He's a PhD economist, and I like to call him Dr. O. Hey, Dr. O, this is kind of a weird week for you and me. You're traveling. You just got back into Seattle from Las Vegas. I think your points at the casino have to be just like sky high at this point. You've been there like 10 times. I'm in suburban Philadelphia today, and it's actually beautiful here today. It's like 78 degrees. Nice to be back in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and always great to be with you.
Same here, man. I am glad to get off this plane and to be back in Seattle and heading back to the office soon. So let's get this show on the road.
All right, so we're taping this on Thursday. The jobs report's coming out tomorrow. It's coming out Friday, October 4th. We're not going to be able to talk about that until next week. And at that point in time, who knows, maybe there'll even be revisions on
it. Yeah, well, I mean, look, the reality is it's going to look, it's probably going to look pretty good. We had initial unemployment claims actually falling last month for most of the month of August. Continuing unemployment claims also falling. And so those are predictive of the employment growth, right? And so I expect maybe even an upside surprise in the jobs report this for the month of September.
All right. So on the calendar for the week ahead, it's a lot of little stuff, right? We're going to get a consumer credit report on Monday. We're going to get a U.S. trade deficit report coming in on Tuesday. We don't typically talk about that, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality here is the big stuff is going to be the Fed officials. It's going to be a lot of Fed officials talking next week.
There are, like, pretty much every day next week, there's somebody from the Fed's going to be out on a podium talking about what's what.
That's right. And it's going to reflect what we see in the jobs report, right? So,
sure.
I think you're going to see that more and more of them are going to be talking about the labor market, focusing on the labor market as opposed to inflation. And honestly, I think the labor market looks pretty good. And that all of the fears, that we saw in August, for the July report and the August report are going to dissipate. We got revisions to personal income and gross domestic income numbers that showed they grew actually faster than previously thought in Q1 and Q2. And the numbers look pretty good. The economy still is growing at a rapid pace. We got a lot of productivity growth, also surprising on the upside. So yeah, that's all going to be reflecting in the conversation. And of course, next week, I think the main event is really going to be the core CPI, the inflation report, right? The CPI measured by the Consumer Price Index. Now, remember, CPI has been easing. Headline CPI easing maybe faster than core CPI. And I think that's probably what we're going to continue to see in next week's report.
Yeah, that's coming. That's going to come out. That's going to come out Thursday. Hey, let's go back to jobs and the job market. We don't have the data to talk about, but I mean, word on the street. Is it just as easy now to get a job as it has been? I mean, you and I have talked over the last, I don't know, probably 2 years about the job, about about the U.S. or the availability of U.S. jobs, and I think all along you've said anyone who wants to work can find work, here in the United States. Do you still feel like that is the case?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is the labor market was unsustainably hot
Yeah.
for the past couple of years, and it has cooled. But it's not cooled. It's cooled basically to a level that's consistent with a more balanced labor market. We had more than 2 jobs per available job seeker. Now the ratio is basically 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things are cooling, but they're still in a pretty good place. And yeah, and you're right that we went from the Great Resignation to
Yes.
the Great Stay, right? We went
Yep.
from a place where basically there were so many jobs available per unemployed worker, per job seeker, that people could basically ghost their employers and
Yep.
move on to the next thing. They can't do that anymore, right? So we moved to really abnormally high quit rates
Mm-hmm.
to kind of a more normal. Okay, maybe slightly. So some labor market economists might disagree with me on this. Slightly less than normal quit rates, right?
Right.
We have right. So the labor market kind of cooled a little bit more than where it was in 2019 before the big disruption
Mm-hmm.
began.
And you had referenced the Great Resignation, and also gone with that is the quiet quitting.
That's right.
Where
That's
people
right.
are sort of
That's gone.
yeah. And
That's gone.
so what has that done? Do
So
you
so
think?
bargaining power has shifted. It
Yeah.
used to be that workers had all the bargaining power. Well, they don't anymore, and we're in a more balanced labor market. Maybe slightly uh, turning more in favor of employers.
Mm-hmm.
But you're looking at layoffs. Layoffs remain very low. Perhaps employers are hoarding labor, uh, trying to keep their best and brightest. And then at the same time, employees are not so sure they're going to find a job easily if they quit their current one,
Right.
and so they're just staying.
All right, let's take it out with this. We referenced the fact that like basically every Fed president and or governor has something appearing on the calendar. I'm being hyperbolic, but there's going to be a lot of Fed talk next week. What are you anticipating hearing from the members of the Federal Reserve?
I anticipate that various presidents are going to continue to try to stick to the main message, right? The message from the chair has been the labor market's been cooling, but it's in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
I think he came out a little bit less dovish in his last appearance, the Fed chair, which is something we predicted right here on this podcast for our listeners.
Yeah.
Is that look that the labor market has cooled, but it's not at a place. The U.S. economy is not in a place where things are falling apart.
Yeah.
In fact, the decline and the easing, the moderation in inflation that we've seen in the past year is actually a tailwind for household budgets and consumers' purchasing power. And that's actually going to kind of help sustain this U.S. economy and prevent it from falling into potential contraction.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts as always. We'll call it to an end there. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of terrific podcasts at americastalking.com.